assistance. Most importantly for everyone, check your credit scores right now. A lot of servicers had errors reporting the suspended payments, so you really need to verify that the payments were not reported as deferred or delinquent. And finally, really consider what's best for you. So many people will need this relief, but some folks may want to continue to pay down principal and interest while the suspended payments are in place. So you can contact your servicer to actually reinstate payments or make a modified payments. So really the takeaway is if your loans are covered, you don't need to worry about making loan payments until October 2020. There'll be no penalty for non-payment, and your loan will not go into delinquency or default. It's really important to be proactive. I always say be your own hype man. So don't let your loans move to default before you make a move. And finally, the decisions about borrowing are really personal. So take time to choose a school and a program that's right for you.
Thank you so much, Janan. So one follow-up question is, what should those who are considering enrolling in a new program or credential, particularly I'm thinking about those most affected by this crisis, take into consideration?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing is that there are income-based repayment plans available for everyone with federal student loans. And what these IDR plans do is allow you to pay a portion of your discretionary income to your payments. So when payments resume after September 30th, you really want to make sure you choose the payment plan that's right for you. And an income-driven payment plan could bring your payments to low as $0 a month. So definitely investigate payment plans. Additionally, thinking about the people most effective. Okay, research suggests that no matter what, people feel like they got a good return on their investment if the school's value and quality gave them a good opportunities after. So it means that the research now is really important. So when you borrow, learn the details of the loan, find your servicer, understand the interest rates, know if you have subsidies. I know this sounds like a lot, but it's really important to invest time now in understanding who and what you're borrowing so that you know all your available options at this time. If you made payments and it's suspended, you can actually have those refunded. Contact your servicer. So if you made payments during this time and you're realizing that your financial security is being threatened, you can call, have your payments sent back to you, put those in an emergency fund. So there are a lot of options, but they all start with finding out the information about your loans.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Janan. So to round out this conversation, let's move to Yanela Frias, the president of Prudential Retirement, to talk about building financial wellness. Janella?
Thank you, Kara. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you all for joining us. And before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that many of our listeners are essential workers or have families who are on the front lines of our current crisis. So on behalf of Prudential, I just wanted to thank everyone for everything you're doing. And no matter what your life was prior to the crisis, we are in a different world now, and it is very stressful. So I acknowledge that. And as Anna and Janan comments, based on, as Anna and Janan comments said, financial resilience and student loan debt, those comments are spot on. And we would agree that having a strong foundation of financial wellness can reduce some of the stress that people are under when they have financial concerns. Now, I'm going to focus my comments on the role of the employer and on offerings that workers might want to take advantage of from their benefits programs. Now, well before the crisis, employers were embracing the idea of offering more financial wellness tools and resources to their workers as part of a holistic benefits program. And that's because we all know that people need help with their finances. Figuring out how to save for the future when you also have short-term expenses and debt to pay off is not easy. So we believe the workplace is the best place to build people's confidence and familiarity with their options around finances and to build positive habits for budgeting, debt management, and savings. And this is because the employer-sponsored benefits program provides many opportunities to engage with individuals. in discussions about their goals year-round and at critical life events like marriage and the birth of a child. But even more important, 76% of people say they trust their employers. That is well above the trust they have on other institutions, with the government, or the news media, or business in general. So they trust their employer the most. Now, employers also have a vested interest in helping their employees with financial education and tools, because research shows that workers are much more likely to stay with an employer that offers a holistic financial wellness program. And workers who are less stressed about money are also more focused and more productive in the workplace. Now, all of this was true pre-COVID, and it is even more true today. And as Anna pointed out, too many Americans are living too close to the edge and don't have the resources they need to weather a financial shock like the one we're seeing today. So my advice is to start by exploring more of what is available through your employer and their benefits providers. For example, even though we are talking about personal finances here, it is important to recognize that the anxiety and isolation that many people are feeling today, and how that leads to feelings of frustration and anger, which can. Many employers have support programs and counseling available to help employees and their families cope with what's happening in today's environment. Also, given the economic impact of the coronavirus, in addition to the health issues, many employers are encouraging workers to learn new skills that can be leveraged into new job opportunities. And they're also offering more financial education and counseling opportunities. Benefits providers, for example, the provider that runs your retirement plan, are likely offering additional tools like checklists and calculators to help you make smart financial decisions. And then there's the CARES Act and the government-led stimulus efforts. Now, in addition to the student loan relief that Jinan talked about, the CARES Act made it easier for workers who participate in a retirement plan to withdraw money for short-term needs if they meet certain requirements, including being diagnosed with the disease or being directly financially impacted, and if their employer elects to make the CARES Act provisions available. The CARES Act allows penalty-free distributions, allows increased loan limits, and allows workers who have taken a loan that they are currently repaying to suspend those payments through the end of this year. Now, those are all options that workers might have available to them for short-term financial relief if they need it. Plus, many retirement plans have built-in provisions for hardship withdrawals, even if you don't meet the requirements of the CARES Act. Now, I would add caution here that individuals need to balance their short-term needs with their long-term financial flexibility and security, which is really what the retirement savings are for. We know that many individuals will have to make tough decisions and trade-offs to make it through the next few weeks and months, but I would encourage them to only take money that they've earmarked for long-term goals if they absolutely need it. I know this may seem impossible right now, which is why exploring all of your financial options is so important. And I know these are tough times, but we have been through tough times before. And I think we will emerge stronger as we have before. I'm optimistic that this time will be the same and we will be stronger coming out of this crisis.
Thank you so much, Janella. So speaking of the future and of the workplace, it's especially how important it is in the workplace to access these benefits and education. I wonder if you could speak about your thoughts on how the workplace may change post-crisis.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I believe the workplace will be very different coming out of the crisis. This experience will have a lasting effect on all aspects of our life, including how we work. And I think really the workplace will become much more of a collaboration space, a place where we go to engage with colleagues and engage in team activities. And individual work will be much more consistently done at home. I think we have proven, not only in the US, but globally, that we can be quite productive virtually and working from home. So I think that will become much more prominent. And I think we'll see much more virtual meetings and training sessions in the future, even in workplace settings. So I think that will change fairly significantly. In terms of financial wellness, what we've experienced makes financial wellness even more important in the workplace. I know that every employer that we speak to every day is looking for new ways to shape their benefits programs to really optimize their benefit dollars to help workers through these kinds of shocks, should they happen again in the future. And as we've seen before, and we know they will happen again in the future. And then lastly, I think, given the environment we're in this country, I think it is critically important to recognize that the workplace also has to consistently ensure that we're inclusive and that we celebrate our differences. Obviously, as a mother, an American, and an immigrant from Cuba, I'm very, very touched and disturbed by the events happening in our country. And I think we can do better. We must do better. And I think we can start that at the workplace.
Thank you so much, Janella. And thank you to our panelists. As a reminder for viewers on the line, if you have a question for these panelists, we'll be answering these questions right now. So use the Q&A function on Zoom to ask your question. We have two questions about student loans. So Janan, not to put you on the spot, but our first question is around how does the student loan deferment affect folks who are currently enrolled in the public student loan forgiveness program?
Yeah, thank you, Cara. So if you have loans that are suspended by the Department of Education, not by another state or your servicer, by the Department of Education, any of those payments for public service loan forgiveness, the TEACH program, the health services program, any of the suspended payments during this time count toward qualifying payments for your program. So if you were in a qualifying payment plan, meaning an income-based repayment plan, and you had already applied and were in the public service loan forgiveness program, and your loans have now been suspended, these payments count towards forgiveness.
Awesome. A follow-up question. One viewer is asking, what is the implication of refinancing a current 7% loan? And would the 25-year forgiveness nullify if they refinance their current federal student loan?
So I'll answer it directly, and then I'll give some more general advice. So if you refinance or consolidate your federal loans, you will lose your qualifying payments toward loan forgiveness. So you always have the option to consolidate your federal loans into one direct loan that would be eligible for these relief options. But I would I would urge people to understand that you would have zero interest rate for this period or any other relief periods, but the interest rate on your loan may be higher than what you are currently paying once the relief ends. In addition, when you consolidate, any outstanding interest will capitalize, meaning if you had any outstanding interest, it's added on your principal balance when you consolidate. So when you think of those two things together, it might not be the best move for someone looking for help now. I would say, like, the biggest thing to remember is that these are a little bit different decisions than normal. You really want to think about what's going to be best for you and your family, your budget, to ensure you have the financial resources to stay safe and healthy for the duration of the pandemic.
Thank you. This next question is geared towards Professor Lusardi, and it's around, I wonder if you can talk, Anna, about how you think financial education, especially in higher education in the US and globally, may change, including basic concepts of financial planning post this crisis.
Yes, certainly I think it is changing in the sense that I hope it will be more prominent, both in school and in the workplace. I think the current crisis and also the one before that has really shown how important it is that people have the basic knowledge, and also that we shouldn't focus just on, behavior like saving for retirement, for example, but we really look holistically at all of the decisions that people have to make, first because they are interrelated and because each of them are really important. So for example, this pandemic has really shown us how so few families, for example, had precautionary savings, and this is so critically important. So I really hope that one of the major lessons we can take from this crisis is how to better prepare for the next crisis, and how we can do so starting in the school and starting very early, because our also saving habits start very early, so that they are ingrained in our youth and in our society. Clearly, our financial decisions have become a lot more complex. Student loan are another example why we need financial education. The stress that people feel, the worker feel, are another reason why we need it in the workplace. And I would say, schools are incredibly important, but all the other places where people go to work, Yahoo Finance, I think, is also a nice opportunity to do more financial education. And, now I think is needed more than ever, and certainly in a more holistic way.
Thank you. One final question for all of our panelists before we turn it over to Adam and Rick. What is one key takeaway for people who are concerned with their personal finances right now?
I'll start by saying that you have to be active. In finance, ignorance is not bliss, and inaction is often not bliss. You have to take care of your finances in order to make progress, in order to achieve result. Often our inaction is not save, not pay attention, not look for the best conditions. And it's really important and timely now that we do so.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Janan and Janella, any other final thoughts on takeaways before we turn it over?
Yeah, so maybe I'll start. And I think the one key takeaway I would stress is the importance of emergency savings. And Anna spoke about it. She referred to it as precautionary savings, but it's really that rainy day fund. And when you think about the majority of Americans not having many savings, not being able to afford a $500 emergency, when we experience an event like the current crisis and a large portion of the population loses their job, they don't have savings to rely on. And you saw that long food line. And I think it is important for everyone to make sure that they have that rainy day fund, because things will happen and crises will happen. And we always need to be prepared. And emergency savings is very core to financial resiliency and well-being.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you, Anna, Janella, and Janan. Now I'm going to toss it over to Yahoo Finance's Adam Shapiro, who will lead a conversation answering your financial questions with the founder of Edelman Financial Engines, Rick Edelman himself. Adam, please take it away.
And thank you very much, Kara. Good to be with all of you. And there's Rick, he has popped in. Let me give you a bit of a background in case you don't know. Rick Edelman is not only the author of more than 10 books, some of which are New York Times bestsellers on personal finance and investing. He is also the host of a weekly radio show syndicated to more than 100 stations nationwide. He is the founder of Edelman Financial Engines, and he's joining us now to answer the questions a lot of people have about investing in a COVID type or a coronavirus pandemic. Rick, good to see you.
You too, Adam. Good to be with you.
We've got questions loading up, but I want to start very basically. Whether you do it on your own or whether you have a financial advisor, what are maybe 3 key things all of us need to address or consider as we map out a financial plan to get through this crisis?
Yeah, the world has totally changed on us, hasn't it, in the past few months? And we thought we were dealing with one pandemic, and the events of the past week with the murder of George Floyd has shown us that we're really dealing with 2 pandemics simultaneously. One, frankly, far worse than the other, as it's been infecting our nation for 400 years. So we need to come to grips with the fact that life is far more complicated, that circumstances are far more difficult, and we're not going to have a ready fix to this on a national scale. The economy is doing very poorly. It is projected to continue doing so. The Congressional Budget Office just today released a report saying that they expect the economy to take 10 years before it recovers. We've already got 40 million Americans unemployed. Many are projecting that number to get a lot worse. And so we can't take anything for granted, let alone the lack of equal opportunity that exists in our country that is now become dominant in our minds, and rightfully so. So what do we need to do about this? Well, first is to recognize that most people make a fundamental mistake about the economy. Most people think the economy consists of two parts, good times and bad times. That's simply not true. There's no such thing as good times. From a financial planning perspective, there are bad times and preparing for bad times. And if you begin your personal finance exercise with that focus in mind, you'll be in a much better position to get yourself through crises which are inevitable. The current crises that we're experiencing is simply the latest in a long string of economic crises that our nation has faced in its history. And when we get past this one, there will be another one at some point in the future. We just bounce from crisis to crisis. So we need to prepare first and foremost. We need to evaluate very carefully, what do I need to be doing to get me through bad times? It's easy to get through not so bad times, but how do I prepare? And that means making sure you have enough insurance, health insurance, life insurance, property insurance, umbrella liability insurance. We also need to make sure you have proper estate planning. Do you have a will? Do you have a medical directive? Do you have powers of attorney so that family members can help manage your affairs in the event you're unable to do so? Do you have sufficient cash reserves? In other words, if you do lose your source of income, whether it's a job or a pension or investment income, if that gets interrupted, can you pay your bills? Can you buy food and medicine, maintain a roof over your head? So those are the three things that we need to start with, Adam, first, is insurance, estate planning, and cash reserves.
So let's break this down a bit, because it depends where you are in your age and career to answer some of those questions. So I want to start right now with someone who's at that moment of retirement, who's already written in. I'm going to read their question to you, and here it is. I am at full Social Security retirement age and am in process of retiring. By a fluke, a large part of my retirement fund is in cash as I was switching accounts, enough to carry me to age 70 without having to cash out any other funds. Here's the question. Does it make sense for me to use this cash now and wait to 70 to take Social Security, or should I take Social Security now and reinvest this cash into either stocks or bonds?
Well, it's hard to answer that question without delving into the total portfolio you've got. But I would say, generally speaking, if you can afford to delay your Social Security benefits, that's what you should do. For the simple reason, as you know, I'm sure, that every year you delay, the benefit once you start is higher. It rises 8% per year from age 62 to age 70, and then it caps off at that point. So if you can wait to age 70 and you're in good health, meaning your life expectancy is 15 years or more, and it is for most 70-year-olds, then yes, you should delay. You'll be worthwhile in the long run. You can still invest the money you've got. You don't have to keep in cash 100% of the money that you have available, because you're not going to be spending all of it on day one. So you could create a diversified portfolio with the bulk of your savings to improve the return that you would be getting over, a bank account that's paying 0 point nothing. So what that portfolio should look like is a much deeper question, given the volatility that our financial markets are experiencing due to the economy right now. But yeah, generally speaking, if you can defer your Social Security benefit to age 70, do that.
So let me ask you a question about someone, let's say they're 45, a woman or a man who might be asset rich but cash poor, and here they are in the middle of the pandemic. Let's say they have equity in their house. Would now, with interest rates being as low as they are, be a good time to refinance and pull cash out to get through the next year or two if they're cash poor? And if so, what are the negotiating strategies to do that?
Yes, if you have no other resources elsewhere, no savings, or you don't want to liquidate them because of taxes or fees or other adverse implications, and you've got no income because of furloughs and layoffs, then yes, home equity is a wonderful resource to tap into. And it's the only silver lining in this horrible environment we're in, that interest rates are much lower than ever before, giving a lot of Americans the opportunity to refinance their home mortgages and lower those interest rates, saving you a lot of money. In many cases, you could even take cash out of that mortgage, $10, $20, $30, $50,000, and still end up with a lower payment because interest rates are so much lower than perhaps what you're dealing with in your loan. So yes, cashing out refi could make sense to create a cash cushion to tide you over so that you aren't house rich and cash poor. How do you go about getting a refinance? Well, it's pretty simple. Contact your current lender. That's the best place to start. You can go to a mortgage broker as well who can shop loans for you, but just start with your current lender. And through a nifty program, you might be able to avoid the hassle of a full-blown refi, because we all know what a lot of fun that is. You know, all that massive paperwork and the appraisal and the minimum fees, and it takes months. It's just such a nuisance. You might be able to skip all of that, or a lot of it anyway, by doing a recast or a reset instead of a refi. What's the difference? Well, with a full-blown refi, you're throwing out the old loan and getting a brand new loan. With a recast or a reset, you're keeping your current loan. And the only thing you're changing is the interest rate itself. As a result, the paperwork is a lot less.
Wait, let me stop you right there on a recast. The bank can let's say you're at 4%. The bank can say, we're going to just change this from 4 to 3.5%. Do I have to put money down to get that to happen?
It depends on the institution and their policies. In many cases, no, you don't even have to put money down. In other cases, the bank will want you to make an additional down payment. That kind of contradicts those who are trying to do a cash out refi, because you want to get money out, you put money in. So you have to talk to your lender about it. But here's the neat thing. Because interest rates are so low and so many people are taking advantage of it, it becomes a buyer's market. You literally call your bank and you say, I want you to improve my loan rate, because if you don't, I'm going to go to a competitor and take my business to them. Banks know that, so they might as well give you the lower rate. They'd have to give the lower rate to a brand new customer. They might as well give it to a current customer and maintain loyalty and goodwill. So you've got to talk to your lender and see if it's available. I will tell you that in recent days, we've had reports that many lenders are starting to shrink back from their refinance business because of huge demand. With everybody working from home, they're having trouble meeting the demand. And so don't be surprised if it's a hassle factor to get the bank to agree to this, but it is certainly worth pursuing.
This is going to sound like horrible advice, but I'm wondering if there are people out there who might see, I can get a 30-year fixed rate mortgage maybe at 3.25%. And I think I'm smart enough. I don't think I am smart enough, but there might be people out there watching who think, I'm going to borrow at 3.25 and I'm going to take money out of the equity in the house, but I'm going to make somehow 4 or greater percent in some kind of high yield or riskier investment. That'd be pretty dangerous, wouldn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's called arbitrage, where you borrow money at a low cost and you invest it for a higher return. And there are a lot of people who do that. Real estate investors do it all the time. Commercial real estate investors. Donald Trump became a billionaire. He borrowed huge amounts of money to build buildings, and this is
bankrupt 6 times.
Yeah, well, but this is how it's done in real estate commonly, and a lot of stock investors invest with borrowed money. I will caution you, as you noted, Adam, be very careful if you attempt to use home equity for the purpose of investing. Federal regulators hate this idea because we're taking your home, a super safe and super important asset, and placing it at risk if something goes wrong in the financial markets. If the stock market crashes, you could lose your house. So that is not a strategy we like to encourage.
Okay, we have 40 million Americans unemployed. Some have had more than that, when you add to it, have had salaries cut. A lot of people are giving members of their family money. What are the caps on how much we can give to a loved one so it's not they don't have to pay tax on it as income? And what's the best way to do that to avoid the gift tax if it's going to exceed that cap?
This is a huge issue, Adam, because although you might be fine, odds are your adult children are not. They've lost jobs. They might have marital issues, drug or alcohol problems, health issues. Your parents may not be in good shape. Your brothers and sisters might be having challenges. So this is a family affair. We are all in this together, and you're not going to say no to a loved one who needs help financially. So how do you do it? Well, you have 2 choices. You can either make a loan or you can make a gift. If you make a gift, there's a technical limitation of $15,000 per year per person. But really, for practical purposes, it's unlimited. You can give away, over the course of your lifetime, $11 million roughly. Your spouse can equal that. That's $22 million to any one person, or in total. Don't worry about the gift tax. I don't think it's something that you have to be worried about. Here's the real issue, though. The loan. If you give money to a family member and you treat it as a loan, the IRS says you must charge interest. you're not allowed to give an interest-free loan to a family member. Now, the IRS lets you charge an incredibly low rate of interest, less than 1%, but you still have to charge interest. You have to sign a loan agreement. You've got to stipulate the term of the loan, the interest payments on the loan. You've got to stipulate when the loan is due. And if they don't pay you, you've got to go after them in order to try to collect. And if you do all that and they don't pay you, you get to write it off as a bad debt. But you've got to go through all those hoops. The real issue is this. Very often in families, and dealing with close friends as well, you might be giving someone a loan that they think is a gift, meaning you expect to get paid back and they have no intentions of paying you back. How are you going to handle that at Thanksgiving dinner? So
money's a lot different. You know, they used to say about a book, you should never give a book to somebody unless you don't intend to ever get it back. Never lend the book, just give it to them.
Well, when it comes to money, they say when you loan money to a friend, be prepared to lose the money or the friend. So you need to have your eyes wide open. You need to have a serious, frank conversation with the person you're giving money to so that there aren't hurt feelings in the process.
Let's talk about this. A lot of people have 401ks. 50% of the country going into the pandemic had access to a 401k. 25% were funding it. That's still millions of people with that kind of money. They changed the rules with the CARES Act. So should people pull money now from retirement accounts to use that money if they are cash poor and they need to get through the next several months to year? Should they maybe take on, credit card debt now? These are the more emergency situations that people might be facing. And then finally, I just saw the ad earlier today, reverse mortgages. Tom Selleck was there saying, I wouldn't do this. He said, not my first time at the rodeo. What about reverse mortgages? 3 questions there for you.
So the first is, credit cards are worst. Do not go into credit card debt if you can avoid it. The interest rates are the highest. The negative impacts on your personal finances, your credit record, all of them very bad. Do not use credit cards except as a last resort. Go ahead and tap into your retirement assets or other savings if necessary. You obviously want to avoid doing that to the best you possibly can, but if you have to, you have to. That's what the money is there for. So go ahead and use it. A reverse mortgage is generally a bad idea, and if Tom Selleck wasn't being paid a lot of money to say what he's saying, I don't think he'd be saying it at all. And by the way, he's an actor. What the hell does he know about personal finance and all these issues? So take with a grain of salt the fact that an actor is telling you in an infomercial to make an investment or a financial decision. The bottom line is a reverse mortgage has severe limitations. It's only available to people over the age of 62 who have little or no loans out on their home already. The bank determines how much money you're going to get, not you. You ultimately have to repay this. If you move out of the house for any reason, such as you go into long-term care facilities, you could be forced to sell the house. That could be a problem for your spouse who's still living in the house. All kinds of issues. The fees, the interest rates, the costs. Reverse mortgages are not a great idea. So if you've got to liquidate and you have assets, use them. That's what they're for. The related question you didn't ask is how should you be investing the money in that retirement account right now and other assets? And odds are you should probably be investing it in a more conservative fashion than you were 3 months ago because the world has changed so dramatically.
Some people may be spurred right now to give money to charities because so many people are in need, whether it be a food bank or a church organization, a nonprofit. But those same people want to jeopardize their financial futures. The tax law changes 2017, 2018 make some of this different, or does it? How does that person who wants to donate but not jeopardize their retirement future, how do they do that but perhaps maximize the money they are giving? Because I don't know if it's deductible anymore. It depends if you itemize, right?
It is generally deductible for charitable donations, and God bless you for all of the good works that you're all doing to support those who are in need, and we know how great the needs are. There are 2 problems in the philanthropic communities right now. The first is that 25% of those who do donate on a regular basis have shifted their donations away from the charities they typically support over to COVID-19 relief efforts. Well, those relief efforts are desperately needed because of the people who have become sick, who have died, the healthcare workers are on the front lines, and so on. But you know what? Children are still getting cancer, and we still have animal rights issues. We still have environmental issues, social causes, political issues. All the issues our nation was facing still exist. And so the charities that are providing incredibly important services to the disabled, to homeless, to veterans, to the poor, the hungry, to the sick, those services are still needed now more than ever, in fact. And those charities are often very much hurting. You've got arts organizations that are in severe trouble. The Metropolitan Opera in New York just announced that they've canceled their fall season, and that means they're going to lose $100 million. They may never reopen. All the artists haven't been paid since March, and they may all go broke as a result of this cancellation. So the amount of need is huge. The bottom line is this. Don't worry about the charitable deduction. As long as the organization you're giving to is a 501c3 organization, you get a tax deduction for it. The CARES Act has made that a bit easier to get that deduction, even if you don't itemize. More importantly, you need to focus on your personal finances. Don't give so much that you're placing your own family and yourself at financial risk, or you'll end up being one of the people who need help from the charities rather than one who's supporting them. So be careful, be prudent, but be generous. And I know you will be.
What about people, we were talking earlier about mortgages and low interest rates. Here's an interesting question. What about paying off more principal now and shrinking the size of the loan from, say, 15-year to 10-year? You can do that without even refinancing, just by accelerating the payments. Does it make sense to do that now?
No, it doesn't. It can be tempting to do that, but think about it. If you take 10 grand and give it to the bank, you will lower your monthly payment by only a very small amount, $50 or thereabouts. Well, why would you trade $10,000 for $50 a month? That's a really bad deal. Better to keep the 10 grand and pay the $50 a month out of it to help make the mortgage payment. In other words, in an economic crisis like the one we have, you don't know if you're going to get sick or not tomorrow. You don't know if you're going to get furloughed or not tomorrow. You don't know if a member of your family is going to get sick or furloughed, causing you to provide financial support to them. If you take cash and give it to the bank, you'll never see that cash again. It becomes unavailable to you. Cash is king in a financial crisis. Liquidity is essential. And if you've got a lot of great liquidity, great. Keep it, hang on to it until you might need it.
Okay, so now the how much is great, how much liquidity. And these, for instance, we hear in retirement, you're going to need a percentage of your pre-retirement income, but people factor that differently. Are you still going to have a mortgage? So first, for those who aren't retired, how much truly do I need to have set aside?
Well, I'll give you a number for everybody, retired or not. Prior to the pandemic, my colleagues and I at Edelman Financial Engines would routinely tell our clients to keep anywhere from 3 months worth of spending to 12 months, depending on how secure their income stream is. If you're a military service member, you're a federal employee, you're a retiree with a pension or Social Security, your income is pretty darn secure. So 3 months of income and savings is plenty. But this is COVID-19. Massive furloughs. We don't know what's going to happen next with people getting sick and the economy weakening. So we are now telling our clients 12 to maybe 24 months of spending in cash reserves. Now, the key word there is spending, not income. How much money are you spending on a monthly basis? Due to the lockdown, you're probably not spending a whole lot of money at all. You're not buying gasoline. You're not going out to eat. You're not traveling. You're not spending the money you were. So look at the expenses of the last 2 months. Times 12. Maybe
What if you have extra above that? If you're blessed and have more than that, is there having too much liquidity? I mean, because interest rates are so low, you're not going to get anything in the savings account. What do you do with the excess if you got the 24 months?
Then you might consider adding it to your diversified portfolio, but I would caution you that the markets are extraordinarily volatile. Bonds aren't paying very much. The stock market may crash like it did in 07 and 08 and 09. So we don't know what's going to happen until this is over. So any money you invest, you have to acknowledge there could be massive volatility. Prices could drop dramatically. So if it were me, what I would recommend is that you dollar cost average. In other words, if you've got plenty of cash, you got 50 grand that you don't need for cash reserves, don't invest 50 grand into your investments all at one lump sum. Invest 5 grand a month over the next 10 months. This way you'll smooth out the volatility and reduce your risks.
Okay, here's a question for you. I am 35 years old, have savings, and am employed. Currently, I invest 10% of my income into my 403B. and plan increasing to 12% this year. With a bad market, should some be considering putting less into their retirement or more modestly?
No, I think this is a wonderful tag on to what I just said. If you're participating in your retirement plan at work, 403B, 401k, the thrift savings plan for federal workers, that's dollar cost averaging, because you're putting money in, not in a lump sum, but with every paycheck. A fixed amount of money every 2 weeks with your paychecks, that's dollar cost averaging. And it's a wonderful way to invest. So we're encouraging people to increase their contributions at work, not decrease them.
What about people who are concerned about volatility in the markets? And you and I, in a different phone conversation, I asked you about annuities. People get really afraid depending on their experience with annuities. Is this something, as one popular TV advertisement always says, run for the hills, don't do it? Or I heard from people at BlackRock, who were guest on the program I host at Yahoo Finance, 30% of your total retirement portfolio as an annuity, if you want to avoid volatility and risk, is not inappropriate. What do you say to that?
Well, let's remember BlackRock manufactures those products and makes money selling them. So take that with a grain of salt. And I'm a big fan of BlackRock and Larry Fink. We place a lot of our clients' assets in iShares ETFs. But having said all the above, we're not fans of annuities. They have a lot of balls and chains, a lot of fine print that leads to regret for a lot of people. So we're not really huge fans of the lack of flexibility, the lack of liquidity that those products offer. The better thing is to recognize your overall total financial situation. And that means this. I am not worried about America. I'm not worried about our economy. I'm not worried about our stock market for the long term. We will get through this crisis just as we've gotten through every crisis in our nation's history. 10 years from now, I'm convinced the stock market will be higher than it is today. The problem is not therefore with the investment community. The problem is with the investors. Meaning, I'm not worried about your stock fund. I'm worried about you owning the stock fund. If we have a repeat of what happened in 2008, when the S&P 500 fell 57%, millions of people sold at the low, out of panic, and they sat in cash for the last 12 years. Even though the S&P tripled in value, those people froze in time at those low prices. Could that be you? Might you panic if the market goes bad, if the economy gets worse, if the news becomes even more horrific than it's already been? Not sure how it can, but who knows? Might you panic and sell, do the wrong thing at the wrong time for the wrong reason? I'm worried about you. You need to truly evaluate your emotional state in addition to your financial state to evaluate whether or not you've got what it takes to hang in there for this roller coaster. Because if you don't like roller coasters, you'll be better off on a merry-go-round. And that would lead you to making fundamental changes to your investment portfolio, and better to do it now when the Dow is still at 25,000 than when the Dow is at 15,000.
So, toughest question I've had to ask a financial advisor in my many years. I've been doing this for 30 years since I've been employed at 21. And I was, how much do you get paid? And it was my cousin. I had to ask my cousin, who handled a portion of retirement for us, how do you make your money? What are the questions people need to ask their money manager, their financial advisor? And their differences depending on who that person is, if they're a money manager or an advisor, right?
Yes, and that is one of the two most important questions we counsel our clients to ask. My first book, The Truth About Money, had 18 questions that you should ask your financial advisor. We post them for free on our website at Edelman Financial Engines. And that's the second most important question. How do you get paid? What is this going to cost me? You should not be embarrassed to ask, and they should not be embarrassed to answer. You've got to make sure that they're answering honestly and legitimately. Too often we see abusive sales practices, fraud and misleading comments where people are dismissive about how they get compensated, the commissions they earn, the size of those commissions, etc. The question you want to ask truly is this. If I were to hire you, what would the total costs be that I pay? In other words, I don't care how much you get paid. That's only part of the equation. In addition to what I pay you, what does it cost me to buy whatever it is you tell me to buy? If you're going to tell me to buy annuities or insurance or non-traded REITs or mutual funds? What are those going to cost me? I want to know the total all-in amount, and I want to know in writing. Registered financial advisors, people like me, will provide this disclosure upfront, immediately to clients, even without being asked. We automatically provide it to our clients so that you know exactly what the total costs you will pay are going to be. And then part of those costs are taxes. What are the annual tax liabilities of following your strategies? Because that's a cost you end up having to pay. So you want to know all in. If the advisor isn't willing to tell you upfront and in writing, go find another advisor.
Rick, I want to wrap with this question for you. And you could address this to 21-year-old me or to people 30 or younger who are still starting out and may not be making a lot of money. I mean, that first job I had a second job at Charlie's News in Sarasota stacking magazines because I couldn't pay the rent and put food on the table. How do you save when you're in that situation? You know, if you're someone who's barely making above minimum wage today?
The best trick when you are struggling financially, and we all do when we're young, is to pay yourself first. In other words, you're going to have bills to pay. And what most people do is say, after I pay my bills, I'll invest and save whatever's left. And guess what? Nothing's ever left. So treat yourself as a creditor. Treat yourself like Visa. The first thing you do when you get your paycheck is to write a check to yourself. Then go ahead and pay all your bills. Your money will be gone, only now they'll be gone with money saved. And the best place where you can write this check to yourself is in your retirement plan at work. Join that plan, and that's money you'll never even miss because it's debited from your pay before you ever get the paycheck. So pay yourself first. It's the best way to start.
Rick Edelman, thank you very much. Rick Edelman again from Edelman Financial Engines. Thank you. I'm going to throw it back to Kara.
Thank you so much, Adam. And thank you, Rick, for your time. So to conclude, we hit on a lot of key issues for households to consider as we navigate through this uncertain time. Thank you to our panelists, our co-hosts at Yahoo Finance, our partners from Funding Our Future, and everyone who tuned in today. If you're interested in learning more about these issues or our work, please head over to fundingourfuture.us. Take care, everyone, and stay safe. Stay safe.